Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to create a fantastic to-do list application using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. It's a fully functional to-do list application where you can add, delete, edit and mark tasks as completed. Let me show you the working demo of this project. As you can see, I'm adding tasks to the to-do list. You can see the number of pending tasks just got reduced to 2. Let us try adding one more task. Now the pending tasks are 3. You can even edit the task. So maybe instead of lunch, I'll go with dinner and add the task. Let me mark a task as completed. Now there are only 2 tasks pending. Let me mark another task as completed, or maybe mark this as uncompleted. Delete the task. Also, we have a validation for empty inputs. Check this out. Now without any further ado, let's get started. We start with the HTML code. We have a div element with the class of app, which acts as the main container for our application. Inside it, we have another div element with class container that holds all the content. Within the container div, we have a wrapper div with an input field and a button. The input field allows users to enter a task they want to add to the to-do list. It has a placeholder which says task to be done. The button with the ID add button triggers the addition of task. This addition of task will be triggered using JavaScript later in the code. Next, we have a tasks div which contains the list of tasks. It currently has a paragraph with ID pending task inside it, indicating the number of pending tasks. The actual count is displayed within a span element with the class count value. For time being, let's add 0 to the count value. Finally, we have a paragraph with ID error which is initially hidden. It will be used to display an error message if the user tries to add an empty task. We start off with some basic CSS reset. This ensures that all the elements have no padding or margin, and the box sizing property is set to border box, which helps with consistent sizing calculations. Next, we set the height of body to 100 VH and background to a linear gradient. It creates a color transition from yellowish shade to a bluish shade, vertically covering the entire height of the viewport. This gradient has solid stops, and hence the colors do not mix with each other. Now moving on to specific styles for our to-do list app, the app class sets the font family to Poppins. It has a maximum width of 95 VW, that is viewport width, or 500 pixels, ensuring it looks good on different skin sizes. The position is set to absolute and the margins are set to auto. The left and right properties are set to 0. This ensures the app container is centered horizontally. We add some margin on the top of the app div. Next, The container class styles the main container that holds the to-do list. It adds padding and a background color and a box shadow for a nice card-like appearance. The wrapper selector represents a container that wraps the input field and the button. It has a relative position and a border radius of 0.5 em. We do not need the border radius. Let's set the display to grid and grid template columns to 8 fr and 4 fr, which means the input field takes 8 fr, that is 8 fractions of the available space, and the button takes 4 fractions of the available space. There's also a gap of 1 em between them. The wrapper input selector targets the input field within the wrapper. It sets its width to 100%. It styles the input with transparent background, a black text color, and a bottom border of 2 px. The padding provides some spacing inside the input field. When the input field receives focus, the wrapper input focus selector changes its border color to blue, creating a visual indicator. So there's a mistake here. Instead of class wrapper, it should be ID wrapper. Let me change that. And now you can see the color of the border being changed every time we focus on the input. Moving on, the wrapper button selector styles the button within the wrapper. It has position relative, a border radius of 0.5 em, font weight set to 500, and font size to 1 em. This makes the button stand out. We also add some background color and remove the border and outline. We also set the cursor to pointer, indicating that the button is clickable. Now, let us style the error message as well. For the error message, we set the text align to center and background color to white. We set the color to red, which usually indicates error or danger. We set some gap between the container and the error message by setting a margin top of 1.5 em. A border of 0.5 em gives it a card-like appearance. For now, we set its display to none to hide it. We come back to HTML code and add this line to our HTML code, ensuring the external script is added to our HTML code. Next, we add functionality to this app using JavaScript. We begin by selecting various elements from the HTML document using the query selector and get element by ID methods. These elements are assigned to variables for later use. Here are the selected elements. Add button, which represents the add button. New task input, which represents the input field where users can enter task names. Task container represents the container where the task will be displayed. Error represents the error message element. Count value represents the element displaying the count. We initialize a variable task count to keep track of number of tasks. This variable will be updated as the tasks are added, deleted or checked off. The display count function is defined. It takes the task count parameter and updates the text content of an element with the class count value. This function is called to display the current count of tasks. Next, the add function is defined. It is executed when the add button is clicked. Inside add task function, we retrieve the value entered in the new task input field and store it in the task name variable. We also hide any previous error messages by setting the display style property of the error element to none. The code then checks if the task name variable is empty or contains only whitespace characters using not task name. If it's empty, an error message is displayed by setting the display style property of error element to block. The error message remains visible for 200 milliseconds before disappearing. This is done using the set timeout function. If the task name is not empty, we proceed to create a new task element. Let us see how this task element is created. The task element is represented as an HTML string stored in the task variable. It consists of a div element with class task. Inside the div, there is an input checkbox, a span to display the task name, and two button elements, one for editing and one for deleting the task. Let us create all these elements. Inside the edit and delete button, we need a icon. For that, we use the awesome CDN. Search for font awesome CDN and click on the copy link tag. Paste it in the head section of your document. Now, go back to your script file. Google font awesome icons. Click on it. Now search for icon of your choice. In this case, I'll go for edit. Choose this icon. Scroll down. Click on the code and just paste it. We'll do the same thing for the delete icon. Once again, we search for the icon. Select the icon of our choice. Scroll down. Copy the icon and paste it into the script file. Next, we insert the task element into the task container using the insert adjacent HTML method with the before and position. This adds the task at the end of the container so it appears below any existing tasks. Now let us go back to our output and try adding a task. And for some reasons it's not working. Let me check the console log. There are no errors in the console log. Okay, so it's probably because I haven't added any event listener to call the function. So let me go and add an event listener. So when the user clicks on the add button, the add task function will be called. Now let us go back and try again. Again there's some error. Task name is not defined. On line 15, let's go to line 15. And okay, so we have misspelled task name, then should be capital. That's it. You can now see a task with name A is created. Next, we select all the delete buttons using query selector all. Once the buttons are selected and stored in a variable, we iterate over them using for each. For each delete button, we assign an on-click event handler that removes its parent task element from the DOM. Additionally, we decrement the task count variable and update the task count display using the display count function which we had defined previously. Similarly, we select all the edit buttons using the query selector all and assign event handlers. When an edit button is clicked, we extract the task name from its sibling element, that is, the span containing the task name, and prefill the new task input field with the extracted name. Remove the parent task element and update the task count and display the task count accordingly. In the next step, we select all the task checkboxes using the query selector all method and assign on change event handlers. So now, when a checkbox is toggled, we toggle the completed class on its sibling element, that is, the span containing the task name. We also increment or decrement the task count based on whether the checkbox is checked or unchecked and update the task count display using the display count function as we had done previously for edit and delete functions. Let us try adding and deleting some tasks. So there's some error with the display count. Let me check what's the error, where this is coming from. Okay, so on line number 39, it should be minus equal to 1. Let's try adding some tasks. The display count function now works properly. We now set the onload event handler to initialize the task count to 0 and reset the new task input field when the page finishes loading. Let us go back and style these elements. Before that, let me add some tasks for demo. First, we'll target the task selector, which represents the container for tasks. It adds some margin on the top, a border radius of 0.5 em and a width of 100%. It also has a padding of 1 em vertically and 0.5 em horizontally. This creates spacing and a visually pleasing background for the tasks. The task class styles each individual task within the container. It has a white background color, padding for spacing, and uses CSS grid to define a layout with 4 columns. I've added some more tasks here for demo. The 4 columns are for the checkbox, the task name, and the 2 buttons for editing and deleting tasks. The gap property sets the spacing between the columns. Tasks are given a border radius of 0.5 em and a box shadow that creates a card-like appearance. They are vertically aligned in the center and have a cursor pointer to indicate interactivity. Except for the first child, all the other tasks are given a margin top of 1 em. The input type checkbox within the task is styled to have a relative position, no default appearance, and a circular shape with a border. When checked, it gets a background color and a border color of blue. A checkmark icon is added using Font Awesome 5 free font. The task name, represented by the span element, has a font size of 15 px, a font weight of 400, and the word break property is set to break all to allow long task names to wrap to the next line. The buttons for editing and deleting tasks have white text color, a width of 100%, padding, border radius, no border, and a cursor pointer. The edit button has a background color of blue, while the delete button has a background color of red. The ID pending tasks span selector targets the span element within the pending tasks paragraph. It sets the text color to blue, creating a visual distinction for pending task count. For completed task, the dot completed task is applied. It adds a line through text decoration and changes the text color to gray, indicating that the task is completed. For some reason, this function is not working. So let me go and check. So we have misspelled the spelling of on change. Let me change it to small c. Let's try adding a task and checking it off. It works perfectly. We have successfully built a to-do list application. You can go ahead and customize the application the way you like. You can add more functions or remove some existing functions, change the colors, and do even more. If you have any doubts or queries, you can comment them below. Till then, happy coding.